Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Municipal Council meeting, Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Are there any announcements, acknowledgements, or recognitions? Councillor Greek.
Thank you, Mayor. For the last 12 and a half years, the communities and residents of Barrs Corner, Maplewood, Parkdale, and beyond have been blessed with the presence of Pastor Sam Jess and his wife Connie and their 4 young children, Silas, Tabby-Ann, Granville, and Brith. At the beginning of 2024, the Jess family made the sad announcement during church at both the Emmanuel Baptist Church in Parkdale and the Barrs Corner Baptist Church that their time with us would be coming to an end at the end of May as their family moves on. Unfortunately, it's now the end of May, and we are coming to the end of the Jess era. This is a loss to our community that will ripple and be felt in many ways. Now, the Jess family isn't like a regular family. This is a family who gives and provides quietly and humbly to the community in every possible way. There are roofs shingled in our communities because of Pastor Sam's kindness and handiwork. Numerous houses have been heated throughout the last 12 winters because of Pastor Sam's philosophy. Splitting your firewood is cheaper than a gym membership. Many delicious meals, baked goods, and garden successes have been dropped off at doorsteps of new residents, seniors, neighbors, new parents, ill community members, and people just feeling under the weather, and sometimes just because. And I don't think there's an elderly person in the communities that the Jess family has not spent hours visiting with and checking in on regularly. The Jess family also provided drives to people when needed, delivered Meals on Wheels. Pastor Sam has coached the NGES basketball team. He volunteers with Messy Saints, and you could often find the eldest Jess children with their dad helping in the kitchen during a breakfast at the Parkdale Maplewood Community Hall. And at Modal's recent volunteer recognition event, Silas, Tabby-Ann, and Sam were all nominated and recognized for their volunteer efforts. I've just touched on a few of the things the Jess family have done in our communities over the last 12 years. And I haven't even mentioned Pastor Sam's exceptional pastoral care and duties of the 2 churches and all the lives they have impacted through the churches. Pastor Sam has been with our community members every Sunday for over 12 years, as well as being a part of some of the happiest moments of lives and the worst moments of lives. Through my friendship with the Jess family, I have realized a pastor's job is far from an easy one. The Jess family's friendship, empathy, and kindness will be missed by the entire community, and I thank Pastor Sam, Connie, and their children for providing such good care to us all and being a wonderful example of how we should all treat each other. And as a last note, I thank the Emmanuel Baptist Church of Parkdale Maplewood for organizing a wonderful send-off supper for the Jess family this past Sunday, where the community could gather to say goodbye and send best wishes to Pastor Sam, Connie, and their family.
Please pass on our well wishes to the Jess family as they embark on the next chapter of their lives. I seen a hand over here, I believe. Councillor Haysom.
Thank you. I just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge all of the volunteers who participated in the Petite Riviere Spring Fair on the weekend. I think there were quite a few spring fairs that were happening at different elementary schools. So I'm sure that there are volunteers right across the municipality who put a lot of time into putting together games, gift baskets, organizing food, and just some really wonderful community gathering time. I know that my kids certainly had a blast. I know that there were people from throughout the district who participated in that. So I just want to acknowledge the little school that could, Petite Riviere Elementary, and all the people who helped to support it.
And again, pass on our congratulations for a successful event and a thank you to all the volunteers. Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. In a similar vein, I wanted to recognize the Waldorf School in Blockhouse for their wonderful Mayfair event. It was well attended. Watching the kids dance around the maypole in a semi-organized fashion was just lovely. They had games and entertainment, live music, wonderful snacks, and a great deal of community spirit. Thank you to all the volunteers and the staff there.
And there also was another May Day at West Northfield Elementary School, which was very well attended, and so many other events throughout the municipality. And I do want to congratulate our recreation team for the fishing derby on the weekend. I've never seen so many people and so many smiling faces as they cast their line into the ponds there. But it was definitely a full house at the Mark. So please pass that on to the summer staff and everyone that was involved in that. We also have a proclamation on Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas in the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, we are fortunate to have a variety of recreation and parks systems providing many opportunities for residents and visitors to be active and explore this beautiful province. And whereas participating in recreational activities helps strengthen the bonds of family and friendship, enhancing spirit, helps children and youth develop a positive self-image, strengthens volunteer and community development, and whereas our parks, open spaces, and trails ensure ecological beauty, provide places to enjoy nature, help maintain clean air and water, preserve Mi'kma'ki where we live, work, and play, and preserve plant and animal wildlife. Therefore, be it resolved that the municipality of the District of Lunenburg does hereby proclaim the month of June 2024 to be Parks and Recreation Month, to recognize and celebrate the year-round benefits of recreation and parks at the local and regional and provincial level. And I so proclaim. We will now move down to public input. Is there anyone here for public input? Do I see two hands? Yes? You're one? Is there anyone else here for public input? We have 15 minutes allocated for public input, so you can have the whole 15 minutes if that's what you so wish. Please come forward, state your name and the community that you reside in, and welcome.
I know you need it down, but I needed it.
Yeah, you can raise.
We won't bore you for 15 minutes, but we're back. I'm Tabitha DeChamp. I live in West Northfield. This is Nick Foley. He lives in Hepps Cross. We're back for the playground at the Mark Ball Fields. And it's perfect. Carolyn just mentioned about all the benefits of outside play and all the wonderful benefits of playing and being outside, and that's why we'd love our playground back. It's wonderful for the kids to have. We are aware that the playground is on the agenda, and Tom has some quotes and stuff that we've been looking into. And the ones that we have been looking into are a bit inclusive. So we've got a wood chip surface that's perfect for wheelchairs, for walkers if necessary. There's some adaptive swings. The ones we have offer some shaded areas for seating for our super duper hot summers now. And it offers lots of lower spaces to play with on the ground for people of all abilities. The company that we've been dealing with is able to install the playground by July, which is fantastic. And we were saying that if absolutely necessary to add towards the cost, we could put on a ball tournament to raise some money and awareness, and then everyone can see all the kids that come out and all the families that this would help and affect. And just a couple notes that we said. So on the weekend, Nick was watching the high school tournament, and there were oodles of families and children who are, you might have a kid in high school, but also have a 6-year-old who wants to play and not sit still and watch a game. So we're thinking that would be a big loss to not have a playground there probably for the kids, and for the parents to not say, sit down every 5 minutes. And I noticed the last 2 Mondays that I've been playing women's ball, there's been a few less kids, and I've heard a few of the moms say, my kid didn't want to come with me because she was bored last time. And it was a little unfortunate. I noticed when I played last night, my little girl was the only one on our 2 teams playing because no other ones really wanted to come, and that was really sad to me to watch. And we have an email that has sent in from the Softball Association for the municipality here, so I believe that is going to be passed out also. But yeah, we're just here to make sure you guys know, like, we really think it's so important to have that playground back, and we're hoping that all of these things that we've passed in and are doing can help win you guys over to help get this playground back for our kids. Because we want to see them be active and continue on to ball. And we have t-ball and all the rec softball starting for the summer like very shortly. And people coming to the fields, we're going to have siblings who aren't in there but will still want to play, and the parents will have to bring them. So we really think it's a really important spot to have that playground back, especially if we can have one by July. We still have 3.5 months of ball for this year even. So yeah, and you, I know, put her down.
I'm going to try this. I'm very bad speaking in public. It's one of my biggest fears. But it's Nick Foley, and I'm from Headville. And I just wanted to recognize the summer students that put on the Kite Festival, the fishing tournament, and everything all summer. They're very great with the kids, and I really appreciate it. Also, I pretty much lived there this weekend. We attended the fishing tournament. We went to... which we had to park at the ball field because the place, we couldn't find a parking spot, and walk through the woods, which was fantastic. Also, we attended the regionals. It was junior girls up above, the senior boys down below. Because when we're not at home, my little girl loves the ball field. We're there 3 days a week, and she just wanted to go watch. So I just wanted to recognize the summer students, say thank you very much. And then Sunday night, we were laying in bed. I was putting my daughter to bed, and she asked me, said, "Daddy, when are we going to have the playground back?" And I said, "Well, hopefully we have an answer soon." And unfortunately, she couldn't attend today. She had to go to school. But she just had a little message to say to you guys.
Can I please have my playground back? I want to play with my friends.
So that was a little message from her, and hopefully we can make her wish come true. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move down to changes, approval of the agenda. Deputy CAO Alex Demerick.
Good morning, council members. I'd like to seek your permission to add an agenda item respecting the Wildville Hall, which is currently owned by Tri-District Fire and Rescue. I circulated a staff report in advance. I had intended to bring this in June, but I understand volunteers are anxious to see this moved along, so I did some work to speed that along, and I'd love a motion from council to have that added as 13.1 to your public agenda.
Councillor Hubley.
I will make that motion to add that to the agenda.
Would someone second that? Seconded by Councillor DeLong. Each individual item separate? Just motion on this. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Question, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Are there any other additions or deletions? If not, would someone move the approval of the agenda with the added item? Moved by Deputy Mayor Oikel, seconded by Councillor Bell. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. I would ask for the approval of the minutes of May the 14th, 2024. Moved by Councillor DeLong, seconded by Councillor Haysom. Discussion on the motion? Question called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none. We are down to 7, awarding of tenders RFP. 7.1, award of design of facilities at Mushamush Beach. And we have our Director of Engineering, Stephen Pace, with us. If you could walk us through this, please.
Morning, Council, Mayor. The Stantec Consulting Limited and EXP Services were requested to submit professional fee proposals for the design of the accessible washrooms and change rooms at Mush Beach Park. Both firms are on MODL's standing offer for engineering, design, and construction oversight services, and both offer a full range of multidisciplinary engineering and architectural services in-house. So we received bids from both companies. EXP gave a base price of $41,000, and Stantec Consulting a base price of $25,260. And we added a 15% contingency in HST. So EXP's price was $49,173, and Stantec Consulting's price was $30,295. So budget implications: the 24-25 approved capital budget includes $190,000 for the design and construction of accessible vault washrooms and change rooms at Mushamush Beach Park. The $30,295 will come from this $190,000 approved in the capital budget. The work plan, the design work is expected to take 8 to 10 weeks after award, and the construction tender will then be issued with the submitted bids coming back to council for consideration. Construction is scheduled for the fall of 2024. So the recommendation is that council authorize staff to award the design of the accessible vault washrooms and change room at Mushamush Beach Park to Stantec Consulting for the amount of $30,295, including a 15% contingency and net HST.
Councillor Staton?
I have a couple of questions for Steve, if I might.
Go ahead.
Does this design include only the building, or does it include the, I assume that we're going to use the vaults for the disposal that's there now, or does it include providing water to the facilities, or is it only a design of a building?
It's just the building. There's no water or power in the building.
I'm really concerned that this is extreme, in my opinion, for just designing a building with 2 washrooms and a change room in it. And I'm surprised that there's not some local company that designs houses or does layout for houses that couldn't design a building for 2 washrooms and a change room. So maybe you can explain what's different about this than would be for just an ordinary building that would house that.
Sure. And so there was a cost breakdown. And a majority of the higher cost item is actually the environmental side of it, the environmental engineering side. There's a topographic survey done, and there's an environmental field review to delineate any wetlands and water courses, and that will dictate where the facilities will be located. So actually the environmental component is actually bigger than the architectural. And then there's the development of the architectural, structural, and the civil scope. And it also supports through the tendering process and also construction phase. There's a construction oversight component, and then there's also as-built drawings coming back. So their base price of $25,260, in my opinion, was quite reasonable for that scope.
Okay, thank you for explaining that, because I thought, well, for just a building, that's pretty expensive, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, the
now.
environmental component is the big part of it.
And that's all part of this contract?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Councillor Staton, would you be prepared to move that motion?
I will, now that my questions have been answered, yes. To Her Honor Mayor Balva-Getz and members of council, I move that municipal council award the design of accessible vault washrooms and change rooms at Mushamush Beach Park to Stantec Consulting Limited in the amount of $30,295, including a 15% contingency and net HST.
Moved by Councillor Staton, seconded by Councillor Greek. Any discussion on the motion? Question has been called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We are now past 9:15, and I will move down to, we have a presentation, 5-year transit operational and business plan. And we have David McCusker, Senior Transportation Engineer with WSP, with us this morning. And we have Ella. Still here. Still here. And I I guess I also wanted to make an introduction here before we get started back behind, and maybe, Andrea, you could give us a wave. We have Andrea Hislop with us, who is our municipal advisor. So welcome, Andrea. I know you're back there.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yep. See that? Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have just a presentation to provide you an overview of the study we conducted with municipal staff looking at a potential transit project as well as a 5-year business plan to support that. So in terms of project objectives, our primary goal here was to provide transit service to Osprey Village and connect it to the service currently provided by the town of Bridgewater to establish that strong connection and to match the hourly service that Bridgewater is currently providing. Getting back and forth between Osprey Village and a connection point to Bridgewater Transit doesn't take an hour. There's some extra time that we can use to provide additional service, and our goal here was to try to optimize how we provide service within the county to service some of the communities. So why transit? I think most of you are pretty familiar with the municipal benefits of transit service in terms of social equity and providing service to those of low income and mobility challenged in particular. There are economic benefits, transportation demand management and managing traffic and parking volumes, and then of course the environmental benefits, not just of getting more people onto transit and out of cars, but the opportunity to use electric vehicles to deliver that service. So the reason why we focused on Osprey Village, again, was because of the ability to build that transit orientation into a growing community, to have people and businesses locate in Osprey Village, knowing that transit service is available and making their travel choices based on the availability of that transit. The density of that node is particularly important in terms of being able to attract a lot of people to a transit service. There's again attraction to commercial businesses wanting to locate there and getting a way of having their employees get to work. And then there's the overall economic growth of supporting the greater densities and the mixed-use development inherent in Osprey Village. So the service that we settled on, or two of our real targets of providing extra service beyond Osprey Village were both Wildville and Hebbville, and we recognized the higher density there with the trailer park and the apartment buildings over and above what you normally get in a rural or a suburban community. And then the social need. These two communities have some examples of lower income where there's a greater need for public transit and a higher attraction to public transit as an alternative to owning a car. We developed two service approaches. One was to run service just within the District of Lunenburg and connect at the boundary to Bridgewater Transit, so we would have one service in Lunenburg County and one in the town, and they would meet at a common point. The other approach was to do a more unified service, to say, let's to some degree ignore where the boundaries are. Bridgewater Transit has a bus, we're going to provide a bus. What's a good service that we can provide with two buses working in unison, in a unified service? And then there were some scenarios kind of halfway in between. So I showed you the slide of why we focused on Wildville and Hebbville. This is more to say, why didn't we try to hit more communities within District of Lunenburg? There's more than just Wildville and Hebbville that are looking for transit service, and the reason is kind of the traditional trade-off in transit between the balance between coverage and frequency. So if you have a fixed amount of resources, in this case, one bus, you can either cover a lot of communities and have lower frequency, or you can limit your coverage area to a smaller area and provide higher frequency. And for us to meet the objectives we set at the start of the project, it's really important to have the higher frequency. In this case, a minimum of 1 hour service. We don't want to go anything above a 1 hour service. Transit starts to lose its effectiveness when the buses are very infrequent. And if we're going to have 1 hour service, we have to limit our coverage area. And for us, that was Wildville, Hebbville, and Osprey Village. So this is just a kind of a summary of the process we took in doing the analysis. We engaged with the community. We hosted a community workshop. I went door to door to every business in the Osprey Village area and talked to some of the business owners there, as well as provide the invite to the open house session. And then there were a number of group and one-on-one discussions with various community stakeholders in that list. We generated 15 unique routing scenarios to look at. Some of those were taken from previous transit studies, but most of them were brainstormed. And from that 15 scenarios, we shortlisted 5 of them that we felt best met our project objectives and had an opportunity to succeed. And then those 5 scenarios, we conducted a comparative customer service time assessment to see which ones were really providing the type of service that we wanted. We did a governance review, looked at a number of different opportunities for District of Lunenburg to operate the service from. And then finally, we selected out of that short list of 5 scenarios, one that we felt really hit the mark in terms of providing the type of service that we wanted, and then conducted a capital and an operating cost analysis in a business plan. So this is just kind of a summary of the different options MODL would have for operating a transit service. And then on the right-hand column, just some examples within Nova Scotia of where that's been done, just so you know you won't be on your own, or you may have a model to follow. So you could operate the service yourself as a department within your municipal structure. That's what Town of Bridgewater does. Of course, HRM and CBRM do that as well, but they're bigger services. One of the services I left off the list is Town of Yarmouth, which I understand also operates their own one-bus transit service as a municipal department. There's the model of regional authorities, and you of course have your Common Services Authority or whatever. Sorry, I don't get the name right. And other areas do transit under a regional authority. King's Transit is one I'm working with now on a project. They serve, actually I say 6 municipalities. It's actually 9 municipalities, 3 counties and 6 towns within Kings, Digby, and Annapolis that they use a regional authority to operate a shared service. Bridgewater Transit, of course, is already operating a transit service. There may be interest to them in operating a second bus. Obviously, it would require some funding and some capital investment from MODL and a lot of discussion and negotiation, but that seems like a real opportunity to me. Lunenburg County also in the business already of operating bus service, and that's a model that's currently being used in both Pictou County and Antigonish County, where a non-for-profit on-demand service has also been talked into operating a fixed route service. There's a potential for a multi-area operator, one that operates transit services potentially around the province and not necessarily contiguous, and I mentioned a couple of opportunities there. And then, of course, there are private sector transit operators who could, under contract, operate a service for you. So the preferred routing, this is the one that we selected from our short list of 5. Again, kind of the idea is we're going to do our best to connect Osprey Village, Wildville, Hebbville, and the Jubilee Road area to some key attractions within the town. And as we do that, we overlap the town service. And this is the schematic map of how that service would look. The MODL route does a 1 hour counterclockwise kind of a cycle through Osprey Village, Michelin Plant, Wildville, Hebbville, and then into the town and overlapping the town service to some degree. The 2 routes meet at the Bridgewater Mall once every hour, and then, you know, connections can be made between the 2 services. If you're not a fan of schematic maps, there's a larger actual street map at the back of the document that shows this in more detail. So this is the type of bus that we would recommend for your service. It's typically between 18 and 20 passengers, and very similar to the bus that the town of Bridgewater currently operates. There are a number of options. You could acquire a used gas bus, and there are some opportunities currently in the province. I did make your staff aware of one of them. You could buy a new gas bus or a new battery electric bus, and you can see with the battery electric bus there's a much bigger range of prices in that than I ever like showing on a presentation like this. It's as you know, battery electric buses are still fairly new in the market, and there's some fluctuation in the price. I think it's getting to the point now that there's enough buy-in and production that, like other new technologies, the price actually starts to go down instead of going up because of the increasing market. So somewhere in that range is the ability to acquire a new battery electric bus. And you know, one of the things you probably are aware that, you know, if you are seeking external funding, particularly federal funding to assist in the project, it's likely has to be a battery electric bus because they're all about the climate change implications. So here's just a summary of the business case and the numbers that went into that. The option between a gas bus and an electric bus. So again, I'm at the high end of the acquisition cost for an electric bus. It could well be below that, but to be conservative, we've used the higher number. So obviously there's higher upfront costs with getting the electric bus. That can be recovered in the reduced operating costs that you have over the life of the vehicle. There's also some money in there for signs, shelters, concrete pads, and some additional work to integrate with Bridgewater Transit and to design, you know, where your stops are and spec what the type of bus that you're going to acquire. So here are the annual operating costs, fairly similar between gas and electric till you get to the energy consumption and the vehicle maintenance, where there are fairly substantial reductions to the operating cost. This operating cost is kind of built around the idea that you'll partner with somebody who currently operates buses like Town of Bridgewater or LC Wheels, who have a spare bus that they can provide for your service, and that you would lease that. You would, of course, be the ones that own the bus and pay the bus and receive the revenue from the fares. I've added in a couple of additional items, one for some staff administration. I'm assuming that it would be appropriate for you to, you know, even though somebody else is operating it, you probably still need a portion of a staff position, probably a half a staff position or 2/5 of a staff position to help manage the service. And then there will be some incremental operating costs for cleaning the bus stops, or you're replacing the signs when they get fixed and or they get damaged and things like that. So just some considerations in moving forward. One of them is licensing. So if you did take an approach where you just run the bus within your own jurisdictional boundaries, you don't need a license from the province. You can begin operating right away. But once you cross into town of Bridgewater, as we've suggested with our preferred plan, the Motor Carrier Act requires you to get a license through the NSUARB. The interest of the NSUARB is the potential competition you would have with another service. In this case, because you're overlapping with Town of Bridgewater service, their concern is that you're potentially pirating their customers, and that's their concern and why they require licensing. They would certainly consult with Town of Bridgewater, but in my mind, the service that we're proposing is of value to both jurisdictions. I would really hope that Town of Bridgewater would be 100% supportive of this service and see the joint value in doing this, and that then acquiring this operating license would not be a challenge. Even if it isn't Bridgewater Transit that's operating the service, even if you do get someone else to operate it, or you do operate it yourself, I would strongly recommend that you try to reach an agreement with Bridgewater Transit to use their fare media, that the tickets and the monthly passes that they sell at commercial vendors could be used on both systems, that as you transfer from one bus to another at Bridgewater Mall, that there's no additional cost, that you don't have to pay a separate fare on each bus. That would really help to show that it's a strong and an integrated service and make it much more effective for the people using it. The agreement, of course, you'd have to understand how a portion of the revenues that Bridgewater Transit get go back to you, because part of the service is yours, and you do deserve a share of those revenues. It may not be 50-50. Bridgewater Transit would have to recover their costs for administrating the fare media, but to me that's a really important part of a strong and integrated service. And then one other consideration you could do is to do what Bridgewater Transit did, essentially, is to start with a 1-year or even a 6-month pilot to try to acquire a used bus to start with, maybe not build the transit shelters that you want right away, and just operate the service for 6 months and a year to see how your ridership does, and then perhaps move on from there. Even if it isn't a pilot, I will tell you, if you do want to get a new bus, the delivery time for a gas bus is in the range of a year. For a battery electric bus is more like 14 to 20 months delivery time. So, even if you do want to try to run a service with a new bus, you will have a period of time where you won't have your new bus. And that's a basic overview of the study. I'm certainly willing to answer questions. Ella is here as well. And one thing I would like to say in conclusion is just a big thank you to Ella and to Jeff, who were really helpful in working on this project and very supportive, had some great input. And I don't know if anybody from Town of Bridgewater staff is watching or not, but Jim Coleman from Bridgewater Transit was amazing. In a lot of my projects, I seek to get support and information from various agencies, and I don't think I've encountered one yet that was as helpful as Jim from Bridgewater Transit was. So big thank you to him as well.
So I just wanted to go back to the size of the bus, and I believe you said 18 to 20 passenger. And I'm looking at the more rural municipalities, and I'm going to use Queens as an example. And Queens has been going with the Lunenburg County wheel style buses. And they just announced, I believe, 2 more buses for that service. And they have chosen the electric avenue to go with those because I believe there's considerable amount of funding available for electric vans, buses. And the time frame associated with that style of vehicle is a lot less than the 2-year. Hence, the operating costs and whatever are decreased with the service of that. Do we really believe that the demand is going to be that great if we were looking at a pilot project that a van-type accessible vehicle would not be more appropriate to do a pilot?
If I may, Madam Mayor, an excellent point, and that's always certainly a consideration in these types of exercises. One thing I will say about the size of vehicle that we suggested is it's really important to ensure you have the seating capacity needed to provide the service. There's nothing worse in a transit service than pulling up to a bus stop and not having room for somebody to get on and telling them they have to wait an hour for the next bus. That may be an unlikely outcome, but it's something you really want to avoid with transit. The other aspect of transit is that a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate is that the bulk of the operating cost of a bus is paying the driver. It's not the energy or the maintenance or the wear and tear on the bus. It's the cost of the driver. And of course, you pay the driver the same whether it's a big bus or a medium-sized bus or a small bus. So that is going to stay the same. So those are kind of both two arguments why you want to err on the size of big as opposed to small. One of the things, if you do decide to run a pilot project, whether you get a medium-sized bus or a small one, that will give you a good gauge, I think, of what your potential ridership would be, and then you could base your decision on purchasing a new bus on that instead.
Any other questions? Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. Pardon me. Thank you very much for your presentation. I went through the whole report. I thought it was very detailed and well executed. I really appreciate your point about making sure that it is a seamlessly integrated system with Bridgewater. I think that will be integral to its success, as well as the comparisons between the gas vehicle versus the electric. What type of federal funding is available? How much cost could be recouped on that?
So there's, sorry, so you can see me. There are various funding opportunities when it comes from the federal government or the provincial government. It ranges from, first of all, having a study done. In order to get funding on an EV, usually you need to also, it can be an in-house study or hiring a consultant to do that study just to understand the topography of the land and if our landscape actually meets the opportunity of having an electric bus, because some areas it's not going to be efficient in the end. It does ranges between 75% of full and to even more of funding the electric bus. We did look at options right now. There is of course, it's not going to be with this year because we don't have the budget for it this year for a bus. But there are options to almost fully fund the bus. So we saw a bus, as David mentioned, we saw an option for a 14-seater, so a bit less than what David was suggesting, but still has the capacity to have 2 wheelchair spots in addition to the 14 seats for around $205,000 with around 6 to 8 months waiting time. Again, we will need to do probably an additional study, whether it will be in-house or sending it out, which again, you can get funding from that for the federal government as well, just to see if we can actually have an electric bus within our landscape.
Supplementary, Councillor DeLong?
Thank you very much. I'm glad you brought up the accessibility considerations. I'm wondering, we'll be using a ride tracker app similar to Bridgewater. Is that the plan?
We're not there yet, but
No,
we're
I don't
definitely going to we're going to include all the accessibility
Yeah.
measures that we can get. We had discussions with our regional accessibility coordinator to see what are the needs. As she is a regular Town of Bridgewater, the transit rider, and she knows where the gaps are and what the needs are to fill these gaps. So definitely when we get to that point, we would like to make sure that the bus is accessible as possible, and also the app as well.
So yeah, my question about the ride tracker app is, would riders who require wheelchair access be able to know if it was already filled up with those 2 slots? I think that would be a really valuable service, because that way you're not going to a bus stop and waiting and not being able to access it, and you have a lot more mobility considerations.
That is an excellent point, and we'll definitely take it into considerations when we get to that stage.
Okay, and
Councillor Haysom?
thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and I'm really pleased that this is coming in front of council, because I know there's been a lot of work happening at the Internal Transportation Committee level. I think we all know that transit is a huge social determinant of health, so this is just excellent to see this come forward. And I also think that we have a lot of great opportunities right now between Lunenburg County Wheels and Town of Bridgewater's transit system to make something that's going to work. Just 2 points that I wanted to make, and I think it's important that we talk about the fact that as with any pilot project, it takes a little while for it to get up and off the ground. I don't think that a 1-year pilot project would be sufficient. It would probably have to be more than that in order for people to understand that it is a service that they can rely on, that they can plan on, and to see it get up and moving. And so that's just one point I wanted to make. And also that, you know, we've looked at a relatively small route right now that's hitting a lot of the big population centers right around the Town of Bridgewater. But of course, as time goes on, there could be room for this to expand, to have those fixed routes that can go out further into the community, other loops, but also that we know that there's that opportunity for close partnership with Lunenburg County Wheels, so that we're providing a complementary service. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. It's really exciting.
Any further questions for our presenters? If not, I want to thank you for your presentation. It was very thorough, and council will have it on a future agenda. Councillor Greek?
Just before this presentation started, you quickly introduced someone. Can you repeat the name and what a municipal advisor does?
Andrea, would you like to come up? I know I've worked with her already. So we have Andrea Hislop, who is our municipal advisor.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So yes, I'm Andrea Hislop, and I'm the municipal advisor for the area. A municipal advisor essentially supports councils as well as staff of municipalities with any questions that they may have as it relates to the provincial legislation and or provincial departments with the government of Nova Scotia.
So she's our liaison back to the provincial. Councillor Staton?
So I'm assuming she's employed by NSFM?
No,
She's employed by us?
no, municipal affairs.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I wasn't sure who was.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move down to 10.1.1, Annual Operating and Major Recreation Capital Grants. And I would ask Deputy Mayor Oikel if she would be prepared to move that motion.
Certainly. To Her Honor Mayor Bolivar Getson and members of council, I move that Municipal Council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and approve the application for the 2024-2025 Annual Operating Grant Program in the amount of $80,064 as presented. And
So
I
moved by Deputy Mayor Oikel. Is there a seconder? seconded by Councillor Wynot. Discussion on the motion. Again, this is recommendation from Policy and Strategy Committee. Councillor Moore.
I'm trying to scroll down here to the agendas to find it. Can you remind me how much ask there was and how much was in our budget?
Not off the top of my head, I can't. True. We have our Director of Recreation, Trudy Payne, coming forward with all those figures. The ask was a lot more than what was in the budget.
So I do have the report in front of me, but roughly off the top of my head, it was very close to $400,000 in ask. It was like $398,000 and some odd. And we had $147,925 to distribute.
Thank you.
So again, I did say this in Policy and Strategy, and I truly believe that the reason for the increase in the grant applications is because the success of the education program that the municipality and the Recreation Department held for community organizations to make them aware of what dollars is available for them to apply to. So most organizations are well aware of the grants that are available, and you'll see that in other ones here as well, that the ask is far exceeding what is in the budget, and that definitely may be something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, and I would note that we did have 14 new applicants when I reported.
Thank you.
So that's probably because of the grant workshop.
Any further discussion on the motion? Question called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We will go down to 10.1.2 Saw Pit Wharf lease renewal, and this is another good news. Oh, sorry. There is a second part to 10.1.1, and I have Councillor Greek down. Would you be prepared to move that motion, please?
Yes, thank you. To her honor, Mayor Bolivar Getson and members of council, I move that Municipal Council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and approve the applications for the 2024-2025 Major Recreation Capital Grant Program in the amount of $67,861 as presented, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Greek. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Moore. Discussion on the motion. Again, there was how much money asked for and how much awarded?
So again, we combined the annual operating and the major recreation capital. So the combined ask was about $400,000. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Haysom.
Thank you. I know every time we go through these grant applications, we've really worked to have a policy for and a strategy for how we award the money, and I'm really pleased that that's there. There's always some discussion, and I think that ultimately we're all pretty comfortable with what we've done here, but again, echoing that need for more allocation in the budget as we go forward.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Now we will go down to 10.1.2 Saw Pit Wharf lease renewal. And this is definitely another good news story, and I'll turn it over to our Director of Recreation.
Yes, as described at the Policy and Strategy Committee, we have a lease agreement with the province of Nova Scotia with Department of Natural Resources and Renewable. We had a 15-year lease, leasing part of the property that the province owns to provide Saw Pit Wharf Park. In the last several years, we have made some improvements to Saw Pit where we include a floating dock system where people are able to tie their punts up to. We installed a boat launch and an upper parking lot. And some of the lands that we leased from the Department of Natural Resources and Renewable create some of that improvements that we made to the park. The lease agreement runs out the end of August 2024. We are to give 3 months notice if we want to renew the lease for another 15 years. And so my recommendation that was brought forth to the Policy and Strategy was to notify the province that we would like to enter into a new lease for another 15 years. It's a significant park in our park system. As council is aware, we're currently going through a visioning process for Saw Pit. We did public consultation, we had surveys, and a number of stakeholders, and we'll be bringing forth a What You Heard report from that. So again, the community is reinvigorated around the park. Some of the potential improvements, accessibility improvements, and a number of other things. So I would hope that the province will look favorably on renewing a 15-year lease if the letter is approved today.
Councillor Vino.
Thank you. I touched briefly on this at our Policy and Strategy Committee, but I wanted to reiterate again, and Trudy, you had an excellent prelude to that. You kept saying park. Saw Pit Wharf has become so much more than just a wharf. It's become a community hub, a gathering point, not only for boaters, but for picnickers, fishers, gatherers, and just people that want to get out and enjoy the outdoors. So I'm hoping that this will pass again today and we can continue offering this amenity to our residents.
And I guess part of that public consultation that was held, I guess it was an eye-opener to see that they were using this for residents with disabilities to be able to come down and enjoy a picnic, lunch, and whatever at the wharf. So yes, far more than just a boat launch or a place to just frequent. So I would ask Councillor Vino if she would be prepared to move that motion.
Certainly, thank you. To Her Honor, Mayor Bolivar Getson and members of Council, I move that Municipal Council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and approve sending a letter to the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables Land Services Branch notifying them of the municipality's intent to renew lease number 4814 for an additional 15 years, which pertains to lands owned by the Province of Nova Scotia, currently forming part of the Saw Pit Wharf Park, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Vino, seconded. I seen hands on both sides of me, but I believe it was Councillor DeLong. Discussion on the motion. Question called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Actually, you probably should stay. We're going to get down to 11.2.2, Mark Playground Equipment, and I believe...
So Council have had an opportunity to review in the agenda the staff report that our Director of Recreation has provided, and you've heard twice as part of public input from ball field users who've expressed their desire to see Council replace the playground. What we're proposing today, what we're seeking, is if Council is interested in us exploring this, we'd like direction from Council to explore the possibility of a replacement playground at the Mark and to set a tentative budget, send us away to get some options, and to return on June 11th with an options report. And at that time, we'll identify potential sources of funding. We believe there may be a project that's coming in under budget, which will be awarded on June 11th, and that surplus there could cover some, all, or most of the cost of the playground. We are looking at adding some accessibility features to the playground, but it won't be the same as the fully accessible playground that's in the capital budget. So it'll be a replacement playground to go by the ball fields. It will replace what was removed to a certain extent, but it will have some accessible features, all subject to the budget if Council wants us to explore that.
And is there an approximate cost that you're seeking approval for?
Yeah, we're asking Council to set a tentative budget for option purposes at $100,000.
Councillor Hubley.
So I just have a concern every time this comes up. I support the playground, I'll make that clear. But why don't we have the expertise to know the lifespan of a playground, that we're constantly not caught off guard saying, okay, it's got to go today, it's not safe. I'd like to have something in place that we can inspect our playground equipment and know, it can be depreciated like anything else. I would like to have that knowledge going forward.
Director of Recreation, Trudy Payne.
Yes, so since last year, and I mean, our parks are inspected, and we do annual inspections. But I know that Marta and Maria has been working extensively on park service standards. And so there is very, I guess for lack of a better word, very rigid systems in place that outline when they need to be inspected. Not just playgrounds, that's our trails, that's our buildings, that's anything. And so those reports would be coming back and giving the heads up. I mean, the playground has been inspected. We do have a staff person that is playground certified. In this particular instance, when our insurer came, he raised a number of red flags that he recommended that it be removed as opposed to removed because of the age. There was like laminate that was lifting, the concrete abutments were showing, there was a number of things. So it was his recommendation that we remove it. And so when your insurer gives that kind of advice, it would be staff's recommendation to move forward with that. So yes, I hear exactly what you're saying, and so there are systems in place that you shouldn't be caught off guard.
Deputy CAO Alex Demerick.
Yeah, just maybe a reminder of how we came to this point. Council identified a strategic priority of, we've called it recreate parks, but you identified there had been a period of expansion where you had been acquiring properties and looking at opening new parks, and council felt, we need to make sure that we are focusing on providing a welcoming, accessible experience in the facilities that we already have open and available. So essentially you asked to create a higher standard for your existing parks. That was the work that started last year with Marta and Maria. So you've established those maintenance standards. Now the capital work is flowing out of those.
Continue.
And
Trudy.
And I do want to state that that staff did recommend the playground because we knew it was needing to be removed, but based on all the other capital challenges that council faced, that was part of the budget discussion.
And the budgeted amount was for a fully accessible.
Was fully accessible.
At over 400?
We estimated at 400,000 because, we do have an accessibility plan that suggests we should look through the accessibility lens when we're replacing or upgrading anything.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Your Honor. I find it somewhat ridiculous that only 2 weeks after our annual budget was approved that we are discussing a major capital expense. We as council members were notified in October of last year that due to safety issues that the equipment may need to be removed. Now don't get me wrong, I am not speaking against this purchase, as was falsely discussed on social media by a fellow MODL councillor. For the record, there was no discussion to approve or disapprove funds for the replacement playground equipment at the Mark. There was no vote taken as to, or what was reported, showing only 2 councillors supporting the purchase. I do compliment the public citizens who have come forward and have spoken in favor for replacement equipment, and the 8 teams that would see a benefit in this. I am quite willing to discuss the issue and try to find ways that we can replace this equipment. But when we put a budget together, consideration like this should have been and could have been addressed at that time. At the time, we decided to add some new programs, and many citizens have interests, and many find them important to their needs. That's why we need to have discussions, but for one councillor to play off against the other or misrepresent facts and judgment, I do find concerning. I would like to proceed the best way we can to find a solution for this, and if we have to make adjustments to the budget, that would be fine. Thank you.
Councillor DeLong?
Thank you. I do not think it is appropriate to decorum to be speaking ill of colleagues across the table like that.
We are not going to have a back and forth on this. We are here to discuss the playground. We definitely want to make sure that what we are referring to and how we are referring is definitely in the respectful manner. So I'm going to continue the debate. Please keep it focused on the issue at hand, and that is whether or not to give direction to staff to move forward with looking into a playground at the Mark by the ball fields, which is not the capital investment that was in the budget. This is what I've heard here through public consultation has been for I'm not going to say a lesser grade, but a smaller version of a playground that would meet the needs of the people that utilize the Mark. And I have Councillor Vino.
I've teeter-tottered, is that a word? Teeter-tottered?
Back and forth.
We'll make it a word. In my mind about policies and budget and being able to pivot. And 2 weeks ago, after we had our presentation from some members of the public, I went home and my son said to me, I want to play softball. And I was shocked. That's one sport he does not play. And I said, well, how much does it cost? Nothing. And I said, okay, yeah, we'll do it. And I spent Victoria Day at the Mahone Bay Fields. I'm not sure if there's an official name for it, but the fields in Mahone Bay, watching him play. And I sat there, and in front of me there was a row of kids, and I counted 6. iPad, phone, iPad. Every single one of them. And it was a real big awakening for me that that's all they had to do. And when they got tired of that, they were getting into a little bit of mischief. And of course, the parents said, I'm so sorry. And I said, they're kids. Let them be. There was nothing else for them to do. And that opened my eyes a little bit for this. And as a result, I think that us as council, we do need to pivot. And I will be supporting looking into this and bringing it back.
Councillor Stanton.
Some of the questions were already, or comments already made, so I won't say them. I'm just saying that these parks are really important to communities.
Councillor Greek.
Thank you. There's no doubt in my mind that we need to reinstall a playground at the Mark ball fields. And I'd like to say I'm disappointed in us for not having a replacement playground ready to go in when the old one came out. And we're hopefully moving in the right direction to correct that. As those around the table, most of you guys know, I have 3 children aged 8 to 12 right now. And I have spent countless hours at playgrounds all over Nova Scotia during the last decade. In a child's mind, a playground is one of the greatest places ever. You drive by a playground with a child and you hear, can we stop? Playgrounds are often the reward after a day of errands, work, chores. They're the place to go when a parent is exhausted and children are just bubbling with energy. Their playgrounds are locations for play dates. Their playground visits are essential stops for any road trip with a child. And the best part are playgrounds are free to use. Playgrounds are visited by families of all walks of life, regardless of their financial status. And playgrounds also provide a safe place for children to play, learn, explore. It engages a child's creativity, imagination, develops physical skills such as like coordination, their balance. It develops their social skills, boosts their self-confidence, and most importantly, and this is my opinion, for most importantly, encourages physical activity in our screen-focused world, as Councillor Vino has just pointed out. Now, we've heard from Nick and Tabitha twice during public input lately, and tell us about the children at the ball fields. I don't want these children sitting on tablets and screens while they're in a park. The parents and community members that we've heard from are physically active and are encouraging their children to do so. They're setting a fine example for the next generation with being energetic, as well as voicing their displeasure with us in a respectful manner. We took away their playground, and before you all get grumbly at me, I understand that it was for safety and insurance reasons, but the fact is we took it away, and we did not put it back. Yet, hopefully. So let's make things right and get the ball rolling and reinstall a playground at the Mark Ball Fields. And what better day to do it than the day the mayor proclaimed this to be Parks and Recreation Month. So let's do it, and I'd be happy to make a motion to provide direction. Doesn't matter.
We have several other speakers that I
Okay.
would like to hear from first.
Let's get this going.
Councillor Haysom.
Thank you very much. I know when we when we started to think about a replacement playground at the Mark, the focus was definitely on accessibility, and I know that that is a big undertaking. I support finding some kind of facility that can be there in the interim period, but what I would like to see and what I'd like to make sure that we do is whatever we put in place now, it is a building block for something more. It's not something that we're putting in and doesn't fit with a future plan or design. It's something that can be built on so that what we've installed now stays there and is built upon. So that we have, it's not investing money now that's just going to be taken out to put something better in later. So I just want to make sure that, that what we're doing now is going to last and is a stepping stone for building something bigger and better.
Councillor Wynot.
Okay, this is the second playground removed in District 9 in the last number of years. So I would recommend to council to instruct staff to look into replacing the Mark Ball Field playground at an estimated budget of $100,000 by the June meeting.
Again, I'm just going to hold back on that. Unless you're moving that as a, if it's already done, I can't.
I will second it.
The motion has been moved and seconded. I still have other speakers that I am going to allow to speak on this topic. So it has been moved by Councillor Wynot that to direct staff to allocate up to $100,000 for a playground at the Mark Ball Fields. To bring an option report back to June 11th meeting. So moved by Councillor Wynot. I wasn't expecting that, Councillor Greek. Seconded by Councillor Greek. Discussion on the motion is where we're at this point, and I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Oikle.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on to what Councillor Haysom had said. I was thinking of the same types of things, and I was wondering how this is going to affect the remaking Mark Vision, and if its placement in the ball field, is it going to affect the assessment, the assessment of the accessibility assessment that we're doing on it?
Go ahead, Trudy.
Yes, so in the original request was for an accessible playground at the Mark, and the recommendation of staff at the time was at the ball field, because that is where the playground was, and we knew that it was extensively used. Staff have went out and taken a look at the site. It could be a fully accessible playground. It lends itself well to that. What is being proposed today is accessible features, and I believe what the parents have brought forward, and I have reached out to some playground suppliers, is the wood chip, and it is the minimum standard. for playground accessibility. The top accessibility would be more the rubberized mat. So it could be phased in. You might be looking, if you want to make it completely accessible, to remove the wood chips at some point in time and put a rubberized matting. But to answer the question that if it would be fully accessible, it would not. My expectation would be there would be some accessible features. I would not be recommending to replace a playground that does not provide for accessibility. We have an accessibility plan, and in fact, I think we're raising a flag today in recognition of Accessibility Awareness Week. So I think that you could plan for part of it, but there may be some rejigging and replanning, to be quite honest with you, to make it fully accessible. I look through the lens of, and I applaud the parents coming in and making their presentation. I use the lens of thinking about every parent and every child. And perhaps people with accessibility didn't use the playground in the past because it wasn't accessible. So if we make features that are accessible and more accessible and really strive for that, we would be responding to the wider public.
Councillor Moore. Thought I forgot you.
Got me before. I really appreciate the work that went into this, and I remember the discussions at budget that we would put it in a capital budget for later for around 400,000 for full accessibility. But this has come to, with the presentation from the public, this has come to light to me that we don't need to do the Taj Mahal. We have people here that have common sense in our public that came through and wanted to just, they even had the quote that this is what we can get for a playground for 65,000 or whatever, and they're happy. Their kids will be happy. So to me, that was an eye-opener to me. I have no disrespect for staff, because I know staff is forward-thinking for the future, but if something like this, maybe we should have looked at this at budget time. Thank you.
Trudy.
Yeah. So when staff was looking at it, it was completely accessible. So you would be looking at the rubberized matting, and it is not. I just want to go on record. It's not necessarily the equipment pieces. No. It is the surfacing, which is the expensive piece. And so the wood chips do meet the minimum standards. It's not the way that it was described from a playground equipment provider is that if someone was in a wheelchair, they would still need to be assisted. But if you go to where the playground was now, it's sand and gravel. My mother-in-law is in a wheelchair. You are not pushing somebody in a wheelchair through sand. You could probably assist them on the wood chip. The ideal that everybody then would be more independent would be the rubberized matting. If there was a child in a wheelchair or a parent in a wheelchair, they would be able to assist themselves. And that's, being an individual, we all know our own personalities. We often want to be as independent as we possibly can be.
Councillor Vino.
Thank you for allowing an additional comment. I just wanted to say I don't see this as a replacement for that fully accessible playground. And I wish I could take credit for this, but I can't, because Mr. Foley pointed something out and it stuck with me. An accessible playground should be something that can be used year-round. We have to gate our ball fields, and we have to gate them to prevent damage. Therefore, that playground up there would not be accessible necessarily year-round. This would be for our ball field users, and then having a larger accessible one down below at the mark is my personal vision. I realize the next council will decide that, but I don't see this as a replacement for that potential to have an accessible playground. This is just a bonus.
So again, we have a vision to reimagine the mark. It has been set out in our 5-year strategy. That is another comment that I wanted to make, because I have played ball for many, many years, and recognizing that the fields have to be locked when not in use. So unfortunately, we do not have the damage done to the fields by vehicles. This would be for when there are events there and so on. I still envision a full accessible playground at the Mark, but at the Mark. And when I say at the Mark, I mean at the Mark where the buildings are, the pond is, and where there are no gates and people can go in and utilize the facility, from the bike trails to our walking trails to everything else that is there. This playground was never deemed to be not important to council. This was part of a revision that was coming down. I do have to go back to a point that Councillor Hubley said, and I guess we do asset management on our wastewater and everything else. It would be good to have an asset management plan for our playground equipment, so that when we know that there is a piece of equipment that is due to retire, and there is life expectancies on all this equipment. We can't expect that it's going to last forever, even if it's plastic or resin or whatever it's made out of, that it will have to be replaced down the road. So keeping that in mind and making sure that we are budgeting for replacement costs into the future is very important to council and to our residents. Because again, it got removed. I understand the reason why it got removed, and safety is definitely first and foremost. I also recognize the lack of accessible features in everything right now. And when you say about a wheelchair, it's everything. So having that full accessible, and I did speak about the one in Charlottetown, the Jump Start, I believe it is, playground that they have there, and it is a masterpiece. It is something that people travel to go to. But on a daily basis, there are children and adults using this accessible playground. So it's definitely something that we do not have in this area whatsoever, and something that I do fully support moving forward. So there is a motion on the floor, and are there any further comments? I heard the puff. Councillor Statton.
You heard my sigh.
The sigh.
That's all right. I just want clarification if this playground will be gated and only accessible to the community when the ball fields are being used? Is that my understanding of what's happening here?
Or walk around.
The gates are actually opened during the ball season in the morning and closed at night, so it is accessible. And in fact, when we went down and took a look, if a playground was put there, we think that there is a fairly easy solution, is you could really gate your ball field so that you wouldn't have to have a gate, and you could leave it open. But that's futuristic, that's capital cost to come. So there are solutions that, and so yeah, people can go there during the day. It's open when we open our parks in May, and we close them in December, just like all of our other parks.
But opened on a daily basis.
Opened on a daily basis and closed at night,
yeah.
like the same as Mush would be closed and open and closed.
Thank you. I was just hearing two things, and I thought, this can't be right.
Okay, any further discussion? Question called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. I do want to go back to one point, and in our councillor procedures, under section 8.1, members cannot treat another member with disrespect, so please confine comments to the substance of the agenda. So that is part of our council decorum. And we are going to take a 10-minute break, and I apologize for our next 10:15 presenter. It is now 10:15, haha. And we have our presentation, Sherbrooke Lake Five-Year Water Quality Report. And we have Kaylee McLeod, Coastal Action, and we have Garth Bangay, Chair of the Sherbrooke Lake Stewardship Committee. So welcome. I can throw my voice.
We'll get started. My name is Garth Bangay, and I've been chair of the Sherbrooke Lake Stewardship Committee for quite some time. And in fact, when I was looking at my notes, I've been appearing before this council, writ large, for 7 years. And I'm getting a little long in the tooth, but the work has been challenging, rewarding, and today is an opportunity for us to bring you all up to speed on what's been accomplished. But before we do that, I want to just remind you that all of this began because the council of the day decided that public access to Sherbrooke Lake was a worthwhile objective and one that they wanted to move forward. They also understood, though, that one thing that they'd heard resoundingly from people on the lake as well as people in the community was that anything that was done should not affect the quality of that lake, that it was a huge resource, that we needed to steward it in the best possible way. And so with that in mind, the council supported the notion of establishing a baseline understanding of the water quality in that lake. And when I talk about a baseline, what I'm saying basically is over a 5-year period, we would look at a whole series of attributes of the lake and see how they change from year to year. And hopefully with a 5-year span, we would have a sense of the kind of changes that are normal, such that if we put additional pressures on the lake, that we would be able to detect those changes and we could address them in a sensible way. So it's a difficult job. Science is the foundation of what we're doing. And Coastal Action, who are with me this morning in the form of Kaylee, have been the scientific base for the work that we've done. So with that introduction, just taking you back to the original decision that acted as a catalyst for what we're doing here, I'll turn it to Kaylee to lead you through what we've learned in that 6 years. The pandemic took us out for 1 year, and that's unfortunate. It was unfortunate for a lot of reasons. And then I'll come back with, so what needs to be done now? Because I won't easily fade away. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kaylee McLeod. I'm a project coordinator with Coastal Action, and today I'll be discussing the results from the 5-year study. So this...
Can you speak a little closer to the mic, please?
Yes. Is that better? Okay. So this project was intended as a 5-year water quality monitoring program to establish a baseline of the lake and its tributaries. In 2017, we had a preliminary year to determine the best sites and parameters for this study. In 2018, the full program commenced, and as Garth mentioned, unfortunately due to the pandemic, the activities did not occur in 2020, resumed in 2021, and finished up in 2023, which was the final year. This project has been jointly funded by the municipality of the District of Lunenburg and the municipality of Chester. Throughout this project, fieldwork has been carried out by a dedicated group of volunteers who have been supported by the Sherbrooke Lake Stewardship Committee, and Coastal Action has acted as technical support. So to go over some of the trends and results that we saw throughout the 5 or 6 years of this study, we'll first have a look at chlorophyll A and phycocyanin. These are two pigments that are found in photosynthetic organisms like algae. Chlorophyll A is an indicator of primary production, so it can give you an idea of how much algae is being produced by an aquatic system. And phycocyanin is a pigment specific to cyanobacteria or blue-green algae, which has been a growing concern in a lot of our communities. These can impact the productivity and growth of organisms, as well as oxygen levels. So when you have growth of algae, there tends to be an increase in oxygen levels in your aquatic systems. And then as these organisms decompose, oxygen is used up and you often have very low levels of oxygen. It can also impact turbidity, which is the clarity of the water, and can cause or indicate harmful algae blooms like cyanobacteria or blue-green algae. So currently, chlorophyll A has no set guidelines, but phycocyanin has 2 level alerts, level 1 at 20,000 cells per milliliter, and level 2 at 100,000 cells per milliliter. As you can see, only 2021 to 2023 are shown on this graph, and that's because in 2021, MODL purchased a probe that measures for these pigments, which was affixed to the municipal-owned water quality unit. Throughout this project, phycocyanin has not approached any guidelines at any sites. So total phosphorus and total nitrogen are essential nutrients that are required by aquatic plants and algae for growth. When you have excessive levels of these nutrients, it can lead to eutrophication, which is where the natural growth of algae is disrupted, and it can become overgrown with algae and other aquatic plants. This can be harmful to aquatic systems. When you have excessive levels of total phosphorus, it can lead to these algae blooms, whether it is non-harmful algae like the plain green algae or cyanobacteria, which can have toxins in it. It can also cause reduced oxygen, which can lead to fish die-offs in the aquatic community and can change the plant community structure. Throughout this project, the average total phosphorus and total nitrogen did not exceed guidelines, so this is shown by the red line on the graph. Surface water temperature is important to monitor for because it impacts nearly all physical, chemical, and biological processes. Through this study, it does appear that water temperature is increasing, but we don't have enough data for robust statistical analysis to determine whether or not this trend is accurate or if it's due to other factors. So surface temperature fluctuates both daily and seasonally. There are a lot of external factors that will affect your readings. So the time of day and the time of season that you're collecting your samples will impact your readings. However, if you do have prolonged elevated temperatures, it can impact oxygen levels in the water. So temperature and dissolved oxygen are very closely related. When you have an increase in temperature, you tend to have a decrease in dissolved oxygen. A lot of organisms have specific temperatures in which they have optimal growth and development, so you can see impacts on this. As well, it can impact metabolism. In warmer waters, there are higher metabolic rates, which require organisms to consume more energy, as well as use up more oxygen. As mentioned, a lot of species have specific temperature thresholds, so increased temperatures or temperatures outside of the normal range can impact both habitat availability and the species that are able to live in that area. The guideline is 20 degrees Celsius for cold water fish species, so this is looking at fish like trout and Atlantic salmon. The last 3 years of the program, the average annual temperature did exceed, for the summer months, did exceed that 20 degrees Celsius threshold, but again, we don't have enough data to determine if this is an accurate trend or if it's due to those external factors. If the temperature is increasing, over time it could impact the lake's ecosystem and make it more vulnerable to other changes. Dissolved oxygen refers to the amount of oxygen that is dissolved in water, and similar to temperature, it also has daily fluctuations. So this is associated with changes in temperature and plant productivity. So you tend to have higher dissolved oxygen when plants are most active midday, and those levels will drop in the evening and early morning. When you do have low levels of dissolved oxygen, it can impact respiration. So all aquatic organisms with gills, such as fish or aquatic insects, require dissolved oxygen for respiration. A lot of organisms also have thresholds for dissolved oxygen, so low levels can impact growth and reproduction, as well as habitat quality. Those cold water species, like trout and salmon, also typically require well-oxygenated water. The guideline for fresh water is 6.5 milligrams per liter, and the lake sites all exceeded this threshold throughout the project. So it does not appear that the dissolved oxygen levels are detrimental to aquatic life. pH is the acidity of water, and similar to the other parameters, most aquatic organisms have different tolerances to pH levels. So pH can impact acidification, which is when you have a decline in pH over time, so the water is becoming more acidic. It can also impact alkalinity, which is the buffering capacity of water. So it's the ability of the water to resist changes to its pH. Because different organisms have tolerances, it can also impact organism growth and reproduction, as well as contaminants within the water. So different heavy metals like aluminum and mercury are more or less soluble at different pH levels. The Canadian guideline for pH is 6.5 in fresh water. However, here on the southwest Nova Scotia part of the province, we tend to have naturally lower levels of pH. That's due to our geology as well as historic acid rain events. So we also include the guideline, the Nova Scotia Salmon Association guideline of 5. As you can see, the average pH values mostly fell between these two guidelines throughout the program. At this point, the acidity of Sherbrooke Lake appears to pose minimal threat to organisms, and we did note there was an upward trend at all sites. Total dissolved and suspended solids are different particles made up of algae, dead organic materials, and silt. Total dissolved solids are the smaller particles that can pass through a 45 micrometer filter, while total suspended solids are larger particles that cannot pass through this filter. These are important to monitor for because when you have increased development, you oftentimes see increased levels of total solids. With elevated levels, it can impact light penetration to the water, which impacts aquatic growth. So then you'll see changes with dissolved oxygen levels, the water chemistry, habitat quality, water taste and odor. This one's more important when you're looking at drinking water sources or if you're using the lake as a water source for your home, as well as water clarity, so that turbidity, and sedimentation. The levels of total solids do not appear to be detrimental to Sherbrooke Lake. E. coli is a bacteria that's found in the intestines of warm-blooded animals. Oftentimes, this is monitored as an indicator for fecal contamination. So if you have faulty septic systems, straight pipes, or contamination from livestock, you'll often see elevated levels of E. coli. This is important to monitor for because it can have human or wildlife health risks. The microbes associated with E. coli are known to potentially cause waterborne diseases and illnesses. There are two guidelines that we use. The primary recreational guideline is intended for any activities that you're submerged in the water, and it's likely that you could ingest the water. So this would be swimming or wakeboarding, those types of activities. And the secondary recreational guideline is for activities where you're not submersed, but it's possible that you could ingest water, so that would be boating or fishing. The E. coli readings were low at all sites. The lake sites were often undetectable, so very, very low levels. We did tend to see higher readings following rainfall events. So we classify rainfall events as 25 millimeters of rain in 24 hours. So it is recommended to exercise caution if you are recreating following rainfall events. The final results that we'll have a look at are the sediment samples. Once yearly, we took sediment from the lake sites and one stream site, which was rotated throughout the project. And these were analyzed for 27 different metals, phosphorus, and orthophosphate. This was to assess the risk of internal nutrient loading, which could lead to those eutrophication conditions, and the potential risk from the accumulation of metals. This table here shows the metals that had the most frequent exceedances of the guidelines. Anything highlighted in yellow was approaching the lowest guideline. Anything in orange exceeded the ISQG guidelines, and then the single value in red exceeded both the CCME and the Nova Scotia guidelines. We did see an increase in the metals in sediment throughout the project, and 2023 was the first year that we saw a stream exceed these guidelines. Similar to pH, we do have naturally occurring heavy metals in this part of the province. Sherbrooke Lake is noted as at risk for mercury, arsenic, and uranium. So we didn't find any apparent trends, any apparent issues in the water quality trends in the lake or its tributaries. The results suggest overall low pollution levels, and that was based on the readings of low nutrients of nitrogen and phosphorus, as well as E. coli, which can indicate sources of pollution. This does provide us with good baseline information on the current water quality trends for Sherbrooke Lake. And this could be revisited in the future to assess the impact of any development that occurs on or around the lake. However, it is important to attempt to maintain or improve the trends that we did observe. So it's important for homeowners to know how their land use practices could impact the water quality. And I would like to take a moment to recognize and thank all of the volunteers, committee members, and staff that have helped make this project possible. Thank you.
So I'd like to start by the 2023 red box. Did that happen to be after July 21st by any chance?
Yes, it was.
That's what I figured, our flood. Thank you. Councillor DeLong.
You mentioned uranium, but I didn't see that in your table there. Is that something that you also tested for?
I don't believe that that was one included, or if it wasn't one that was flagged as exceeding guidelines.
Okay, yeah, definitely as a consideration here in Nova Scotia. I do have a comment, if I may.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Actually, if I may, I'll start with a question. Can you speak more to the probe that you mentioned that Modal utilized for cyanobacteria detection?
Yes. So in 2021, I believe it was purchased by MODL, and so it is affixed to, there's a jointly owned YSI, so it's a water quality monitoring probe that Coastal Action cares for, that's owned by MODL and MOC.
Mm-hmm.
And so this probe was affixed to that unit, and it detects for the pigments in both just general algae production and then blue-green algae.
So, yeah, not being an expert on lake health, please correct me if I misspeak on this, but I wanted to share the experience of some residents in District 8 that may be beneficial information to residents of Sherbrooke Lake and maybe other lake residents in the municipality. The designation by the province when blue-green algae is detected in a lake lasts the whole season, may be viewed in the media, and is also on the province's website, and doesn't come down until the end of season, regardless of whether or not blue-green algae is present. The residents of Covey Lake had a conversation with the province about this, and here are some of the things that they learned. The province can opt to make a determination on the presence of blue-green algae solely on the examination of photographic evidence provided by residents. They may never even visit the lake. Once that designation is public, as I said, it stays up on the website. And this can negatively impact residents' ability to market their properties in the case of rentals or local tourism for the area, and may also create an atmosphere of doubt about the usability of the lake for recreation. The residents of Covey Lake purchased cyanobacteria tests online, but this is a very limited way of knowing the condition of the lake and also puts the onus on residents rather than the province, which is responsible for environmental and public health considerations. Blue-green algae is a neurotoxin, and contact with it can result in dire health outcomes for humans and animals. Last summer, a dog in Dartmouth died within hours of contact of BGA. And climate change will add extra pressure, given that lake temperatures will rise, and that creates more of a welcoming environment for algae blooms. This was presented by the residents of Covey Lake to our MLA, Susan Corkum-Greek, and the Minister for Environment and Climate Change. And I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on that.
I will say that blue-green algae or cyanobacteria does not always contain toxins. That is one of the challenges in sampling for it. You always want to exercise caution where it can contain toxins.
Councillor Hobley.
I'm going to apologize for this. You may have already said it. It says here Lake 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you identify those lakes? Did you do that?
Yes.
And
So
I
this is.
missed it?
Let me just go back to here.
It's
I know this is
spots
difficult
on
to
the
see.
lake.
It's
Yeah,
spots
it's
on
different
the
lake
lake.
On the
sites.
lake.
It's all on Sherbrooke Lake.
Okay.
I
I saw
apologize,
this.
that wasn't
Thank you.
clear.
Yeah. And
If I can just add to that, what you've just discussed in terms of the province, cyanobacteria, folks on this lake, is exactly the conversation we had here on Sherbrooke Lake several years ago, when the province was doing a rather cursory look at the issue of blue-green algae. And in fact, we're issuing the same kinds of warnings to folks, upset a lot of folks. That's why this council decided to buy the probe, which provided us with an early detection means. And we've used it extensively in the lake, and we have not been able to confirm the presence of cyanobacteria. We have even put together a small group who are willing to go out on very short notice if anyone on the lake reported a bloom and take samples. That was last summer. They were never called to do anything. So this is all good news. And it is something that we can't wish away. Cyanobacteria is a reality. And the kind of knowledge we're generating through the work that Kayleigh's just described to you is essential to having a sense of how susceptible the lake is in terms of the nutrient levels that are there, in other words, the food for algae, and whether or not we can expect to see these things. So it's all moving along, and I'll have more to say that when you've finished with Kayleigh in terms of technical questions.
are there any further questions from council? If not, Kayleigh, I want to thank you for your thorough presentation. Thank you very much. Garth.
Right. Thank you. All righty. You've seen what 6 years, blank in between, can tell you about a lake. That's just a small, small part. The report, I could urge you to read it. You probably would find it, well, it's actually quite interesting. I think it's about 80 pages long. And then there's a very small 3-page document for public consumption, which not only has the sort of main results, but it also talks about what you as a person being on that lake can do to help protect the lake. So that's all really good reading. You've made this investment, and Chester has too, and we'll be appearing before Chester Council on Thursday to bring them up to date. And the real value you have in this 5 years is something doesn't exist in probably, perhaps no other lakes in Nova Scotia. And I think the committee sat and pondered this and thought, we really should be recommending that on a 3-year cycle that you continue to have a summer monitoring program such as you've had. Because this information is only as good as it's up to date. And it's not a huge investment to make, but if it's not made, it's this, someone will say, well, look, that's so old, what possible use is it? And so we're really recommending to council that you consider a 3-year renewal of the monitoring. Coastal Action is still a key player in all this, and the volunteers, well, who knows where they'll be, but with a little planning, that can be put together. So we're really, really urging you to consider that 3-year funding. And I actually have a motion here, but I'm kind of loath to read it. But it's in the, by the way, you should have a document that's 3 pages long, and it has some figures attached to it. I hope you have that document, yeah? The motion's there. The municipality, council approve a 3-year recurring water sampling of Sherbrooke Lake and tributaries, adopting the same regime that was used for the baseline program to ensure the original intent of the water quality monitoring program, which was to provide MODL and MOC with evidence-based advice before, during, and after the construction of a public access site on Sherbrooke Lake. And I am assured that it's still the intent of this council to build that public access site, and so I think this is very germane to the plans that you have.
So I thank you for putting that in order, but when we have public presentations, we do not have a motion that would follow. So it would go on a future agenda brought back by staff or council.
That's great.
But I want to thank, Garth, you and your team of volunteers for all the work that you've done over the past 6 years in making sure that we do have the benchmark to make sure that the water quality isn't altered from any type of development that will go on Sherbrooke Lake. And that was the Council of the Day's ask when this started, to make sure, and the community definitely did not want to see any harm done to the lake because of any park presence or whatever that looks like in our future plans. Right. So thank you to your volunteers. I know you have one with you today, and thank you very much.
Well, Mayor,
I'm told that he's the one that was leaning over the boat and somebody holding on to his feet to do this, so he survived the 6 years.
He survived. But I have a couple more things for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Go.
We've just talked about the cyanobacteria. One thing that the province did 2 years ago in June was to hold a workshop. In fact, all 4 Atlantic provinces came together to hold this workshop. The university communities were invited, and it was about cyanobacteria. You received an invitation. I was asked to go on behalf of the municipality. It was the first time people sat down and talked about what was known across all these jurisdictions. Now, this year I met with the province in January and said, is there a plan to have another of these workshops? And I got a rather big look. And so I see you have a liaison person here with the province. I would strongly suggest that this council tell the province, in this case the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, to bring that group together, because we don't have enough knowledge about cyanobacteria. But trust me, when it happens any lake around here, you're going to have a massive panic on the part of people. And you've got millions of dollars invested, and that's going to be a huge threat to that investment. So the better our knowledge is about the bacteria and how it operates, the more likely we are to be able to respond to it. So I really urge you to tackle the province on this. My dropping in for a meeting isn't going to hold a lot of force in the whole thing. The third thing I want to bring up to you is that algae require food, or they won't survive and they won't bloom. Attached to this document are some photographs that I took a year ago of new cottage development on the lake. There's 3 photos there. I found it almost amazing that that kind of development was happening on the lake. Absolutely no control in terms of erosion, and and sedimentation in the water. That's how nutrients get in the lake. In this day and age, even people who can afford to build a cottage like that, you would think had the awareness not to do it, but they're doing it. And then you can see cottages that have been finished and have the whole shoreline covered in boulders. So all the habitat's gone, and eventually you have a lake that's dysfunctional. It becomes more like a swimming pool. So others have taken steps on this. Chester has developed lakeside zones that are requiring setbacks of new development around the lakes, maintenance of vegetative buffers. Kings County similarly does this for lakes across the county. And the committee is really asking you to put that on some sort of priority. There are templates that are out there. It doesn't have to be reinvented. The idea of a setback is not a huge thing to require. And if we're going to avoid the problem of nutrient pollution in the lake, it's something that just has to happen. And so I urge you to think about those photos, and I know you have a process of renewing bylaws, and that this moved from the back burner to the front burner. And so, again, a very strong recommendation. And finally, as the Stewardship Committee steps down, we all believe strongly in the need to continue to educate people around lakes, not just Sherbrooke Lake, but lakes writ large, about their job as stewards of that resource. And so we're asking you to consider, and you can do this with Chester or you can do it on your own, but to establish a committee charged with the education of folks on lakes, and generally writ large, about the things they can do to improve the environment of those resources. And so it wouldn't be a huge thing to do, but I think that we spent a lot of time over the last number of years providing annual reports that go out. They're on your website. They go to people. But you can be a lot more active in terms of educating the public about their role. The very fact that you have people building cottages the way they are suggests that our program so far hasn't been effective in convincing people that they're part of the problem. So, Mayor, thank you for allowing me that extra time, but they were important messages that I thought it was important that we leave with you. So, thank you very much.
After 6 years of work, thank you very much. So we will now go down to 11.2.3, Major Recreation Grant, Ground Search and Rescue. And we have our Director of Recreation, Trudy Payne.
Hello again. So at our policy and strategy meeting last week, if my memory serves me correctly, there was some questions concerning the recommendation by staff around ground search and rescue. I was directed to reach out to this group to see if the facility that they were requesting a capital grant for electrical upgrades and lighting and upgrading their lighting system, if the facility was available for public use. The individual confirmed that it could be used by community if they wanted it. They just don't often get a lot of requests. So based on that information, staff are recommending that council consider approving a major recreation capital grant in the amount of $2,545 for the Lunenburg County Ground Search and Rescue Organization to upgrade their electrical and lighting system, and that these funds come from the council contingency fund, as there is no more funds left in the annual operating or the major recreation capital. So just to recap, they They were eligible to request just over $6,000 and some dollars. I applied the same criteria as I did for all other grant applicants. And for the majority of those, I removed an additional 45% to align with the budget that we had. So I applied the same criteria and same lens as I did with every other group, and henceforth that's how the amount that's being recommended reflects that assessment.
Thank you. Councillor Staton, would you be prepared to move that?
Certainly, thank you, Trudy, for your research. Appreciate that. To Your Honor, Mayor Balva-Getz and members of council, I move that Municipal Council approve a major recreation capital grant to Lunenburg County Ground Search and Rescue in the amount of $2,545 to upgrade the electrical and lighting systems, and that these funds be taken from the council contingency fund.
Moved by Councillor Staton, seconded by Councillor Moore. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We will now go down to the added item, Tri-District Fire Rescue and former Wildville Fire Hall. Now turn it over to our Deputy CAO, Alex Demerick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just by way of background, it's no surprise to anyone around the table that there are large challenges facing our fire service, both in terms of the level of specialization and complexity and the changing trends in volunteerism in Nova Scotia. Some of our departments have been proactive in trying to address this. Tri-District in the past had gone from 3 individual departments to a single one to reduce some of the administrative burden and improve coordination. And in 2021, Tri-District agreed to take on the Wildville Fire Department, which had been struggling for a number of years in terms of their obligations and recruiting volunteers. So at the time, Council authorized municipal support for the merger, so that both involved staff time as well as some financial assistance getting through some legal and accounting issues. Throughout that process, Tri-District had been clear they had intended to make the Wildville Hall surplus, so they did not feel it was necessary in order to provide appropriate fire protection for the 4 communities that they were going to be providing fire services for. And that was certainly the case when the departments merged. They switched to only having the existing halls in Tri-District providing the fire service. The title for the hall is become an issue. It was known that it could be an issue. The original title referred to trustees. So more commonly today you would have a nonprofit society that would have ownership of the asset, and then the board could make decisions with respect to that. In this case, there were actual trustees named who had been appointed from the community. Staff had been working trying to locate some of these trustees and then trying to locate some of their heirs, as we found out that they had been deceased. Heirs, not heirs, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, we were not able to do so. So the route to clarify the title in order for Tri-District to be able to declare it surplus would be to get make application to the Supreme Court to have them clarify the title, that Tri-District could then divest of it and it could be repurposed. Obviously that will require some funds. It's our perspective from the staff side, this is a continuation of the merger itself. Council had already authorized staff support, so we've continued to work with that. We just wanted to come back and make sure we had the authorization to proceed with the legal assistance that will be required to make that application to the Supreme Court.
And again, this is something that definitely has come up. This is the second part of this, but when these organizations merged, the municipality provided funds to assist them with the legal obligations that were necessary for the amalgamation merger of the original 3 departments, Chelsea, Baker Settlement, and Newcomville, and then more recently with Wildville joining Tri-District as well. So there was also assistance that was done around maintaining grants and some other things as well during that process. And for the efficiencies that are have been, I guess, achieved through this, it definitely is something that would be beneficial to the organization to have that assistance. Councillor Vino?
If successful in divesting the hall for future purposes, who becomes the owner then and is responsible for the cost of maintaining an old fire hall?
So what we're
want
trying
to
to
sell
do
it.
is clarify that Tri-District is the owner of the hall and are allowed to do with it as they wish that best serves the needs of their organization. It's our understanding that they would prefer to have that hall handed over to a community group or some other organization that could reuse it. If that doesn't turn out to be feasible for whatever reason, they could simply sell it. That's what we would like to see happen. So we're looking for the Supreme Court to clarify their ownership and their ability to do as they see fit as a community organization.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I would like to see us provide all necessary assistance to the Tri-District Fire Department and the community as a whole. I think we need to show leadership and show that this can be a seamless process, even though there are some complications on the way. I think that the community has shown leadership in amalgamating these departments to provide the best service possible, and we should help them in any avenue we can.
Deputy Mayor Oikel.
Thank you. I'm really glad that this is finally coming up, because since it all happened, there have been different groups that have been interested in the fire hall to be able to use it, and most recently has been the YMCA have been interested in using it for daycare purposes. And because it hasn't been able to be sold or to use by anybody else because of the ownership problem. Do we know how long it will be within the Supreme Court? Like, how long will that take?
I certainly don't have an answer for that. Tom might have a little more of an idea of how long an application to the Supreme Court might take to be heard.
Yeah, I think you could estimate 6 months easily, just depending upon the court schedule and what the court is going to require. As Alex indicated, the issue is that the property was conveyed some years ago to certain individuals in trust for the benefit of the fire department. The trustees have all passed. Their immediate heirs have passed. And so there's a gap now on who can act as the title holder to convey property. So that all has to be clarified through the court. So there'll be a number of appearances, and if 6 months I think would be a reasonable time frame.
Councillor Oikel. Oh, Hubley,
Not
sorry,
me.
Hubley. I'm scratching Hubley and saying Oikel.
So this old fire department is a financial burden to the Tri-District Fire Department. There's no doubt about it. Council authorized municipal support for the merger, both in terms of staff and legal support, and I'd like to see that followed through with. Where was I? With the support, when this merger was encouraged is what I want to say. This was offered. I just lost it. As stated in the note from Alex, Tri-District's the leader in adjusting the governance structure of the fire service in their community, and this department has already merged the 4 departments. So I'd like to lead by example and support this.
Councillor Moore, did you have a question?
Do we have to go this route? I mean, I know legally you should, but it's going to cost a lot of money to transfer this, to get the clear title, or whoever owns it that's not living anymore, or whatever, to get it over so that they can sell it or rent it or give it to some organization. do we have to go this direction and spend that kind of money for something that is so simple that we could just give it to somebody?
We'll ask our legal.
Yeah. So the challenge is conveying title. And so the only entity at law that can transfer title is the trust that was created when the property was actually, I believe, transferred from the municipality to certain trustees, I believe maybe as part of a tax sale. So without having any of those trustees alive, there was no one that can convey good title. And without good title, any future owner is unable to certify title, unable to mortgage that title. The other option would be a quieting of titles application, which is actually much more expensive and takes years instead of months.
What good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
So what we've looked at is taking advantage of the provisions of the Trustees Act to try to have the court authorize the replacement of those deceased trustees with a new entity that could take ownership, which would be the fire department. Then they have titles, the title is confirmed by the Supreme Court, and then as title holders, they can act in whatever way they want with respect to the property.
I'm just sorry, but I know legally what we have to do,
Yeah.
but I think it's really stupid.
I would ask if Councillor Councillor DeLong.
Well, just following on Councillor Moore's coattails there, would the former trustees, executors of their will, have any say in this? Does that pass through wills, trusteeship? I have no idea.
Yeah, so it does go from the immediate heirs of the trustee, but they're also deceased. So it doesn't devolve past that. So it's we did spend some time taking the names of the 3 trustees that were originally put in and trying to go through and see what's happened with their families. And we thought we found one, but it turned out that person had also become deceased. So it's unfortunate that that the trustees weren't replaced. There were 3 trustees, and 2 of those trustees could have named a new trustee each time someone passed, but they didn't. And so it was allowed to devolve so that all the trustees were passed, all of the immediate heirs of the trustee were passed, and now you just have a gap with, nominal ownership is with the fire department, but legal title remains with the trustees.
And unfortunately, the fire department is the one left holding the expenses for this building that they have deemed surplus and trying to maintain. So I would ask Councillor Hubley if she'd be prepared to move this motion.
Yes, thank you. To Runner Mayor Bolivar-Getson and members of council, I move that municipal council authorize staff to proceed with legal assistance in addressing the conveyance of the property and property rights questions relating to the former Wildville Fire Hall for Tri-District Fire Rescue. I so move.
Moved by Councillor Hubley, seconded by Councillor Bell. Any further discussion on this motion? Question has been called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That concludes our regular agenda. I would go down to Deputy Mayor's update.
I've attended all my meetings that I've been assigned as a counselor, as well as agenda briefings, South Shore Library events, the Community Solar Guard and site tour in Oak Hill with Mayor Bolivar-Getson, Councillor Bell, Staton, DeLong, and Wynot. I also attended the Community Solar Garden public session with the Mayor, Councillors Haysom, Bell, Hubley, Staton, DeLong, Wynot, and Vino. And on behalf of the Mayor and Council, I attended the Bridgewater Kinsman Royal Canadian Army Cadet Corps Annual Ceremonial Review. And that ends my report.
Thank you. And some of the meetings that I attended outside of the regular council business was a tour of the Lunenburg County Wheels bus here on our site after one of our meetings, internal transportation meetings, NSFM meetings, MJSB, those are regular, public information session in Riverport, Coastal Protection, Eric Corcom's retirement party, open house at Midville Fire Department on the weekend, community solar garden tour with other members and other units of that are involved, dinner and learn for the invited area guests in Day Spring last night, as well as This is Spring, and I'm going to say it again, there are numerous community events going on in each and every one of your communities. Please make every attempt to get out and support the local community in whatever avenue you can. But spring is the time, the fundraisers, the lobster dinners, the you name it, lasagna takeouts, the everything else that is going on in the community. So I know everyone is doing their best to attend those. So I would now entertain a motion to go in camera. Moved by Councillor Wynot, seconded by Councillor Haysom. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. I'm going to wait to see what, it's not hardly raining now. If it's not raining, I'm going outside. So I'm going to wait closer to